Good morning, everyone. Before we enter our sacred space, if anyone has an announcement, please share that in the chat. Our own Eileen has a few organizational announcements.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to church. I have a couple of announcements for you this morning that I want to share. The first is that this morning after the service, we are going to be doing a second round of collecting feedback for the board on our covenant, on our draft covenant that will be voted on next week at our congregational meeting. So especially if you didn't get a chance to offer some feedback or ask your questions last week, I encourage you to stick around after the service is over for our virtual coffee hour, even if just for a few minutes, to get a chance to connect with board members and offer your feedback for that covenant, and more on the covenant at the end of the service before we start that. I also want to remind you that next week, like I said, we'll be hosting our annual congregational meeting. The service, the worship service next week, is our annual flower communion service. So if you've not yet sent me a photo of a flower, maybe it's a beautiful peony that just bloomed in your garden, or a dandelion you found on the side of the road, send me a photo of a flower. Even better if it has your own face in it, a flower selfie. You can send that to me by email, minister@canandaiguauu.org, or you can text it to me, and we'll include that in our service next week. And then after the service next week is our annual congregational meeting, where we will vote on big important issues to our congregation, like our budget and electing our members of our board. If you are a voting member of our congregation, you should have received an email with lots of stuff that you'll want to know before you vote next week. If you didn't, let us know, either me or our board president, Laura Wink. Let us know if you've not received an email and you are a voting member of our congregation, and we can rectify that right away. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it right back over to Thomas.
All right, now is the portion of our service where we light our chalice, or in this case, a very lovely vanilla candle. Just one second. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Social and Environmental Justice Committee, thank you all for inviting us and accepting us to lead the worship service for today. One of the things that I've always been most proud of becoming a member of UUCC is the amount of time, energy, and passion that the members devote to these important areas. And the more that you delve into areas of social justice and environmental justice, the more those things have in common. Everything is completely intertwined, and I think that as a group, we do a good job putting forth our best foot and best effort, and always learning, trying to figure out what's the next thing that we can do. The world seems broken, and I don't know how to fix it. The conceptual fire drills for climate change to spotlight the need for immediate action is becoming a more popular one. But last night, Rochester was actually burning. On Monday, May 25th in Minneapolis, George Floyd was accused of trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. In life, he was many things, but this incident ended with his death, a Black man crushed beneath the knee of police officer Derek Chauvin while he begged for mercy. No criminal charges were initially brought against his killer. The country has rallied in response to this latest egregious demonstration of the systematic racism embedded in our culture that would allow one man's life be taken from him in broad daylight on a public street with sworn public protectors, civilians, and cameras to stand witness over a $20 bill. In many cities, the desperation of communities of color have been experiencing, they've been told for too long that methods of peaceful demonstration are not acceptable, and this resulted in masses taking to the streets. Current evidence suggests that outsiders with their own agendas then pushed this surge of outrage and protest into chaos and rioting. There's a lot of pain and grief, both raw and ancient. Let us all take a moment to remember George Floyd, Eric Garner, and the many others who have lost their lives in no small part for the crime of being Black in America. As we start the process of healing as a community moving forward, let us join together in music.
We sing of golden mornings. We sing of golden mornings. We sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life bestowing rain, of birds among the branches and springtime again. We sing the heart courageous, the youthful eager mind. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing the roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing the earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us glows.
I want to share a book today called Curious George Plants a Tree. This is a book that really relates to our idea of having a good planet as opposed to more of the social justice. It's the planet justice, if you will. Curious George is a monkey who's been around for a long time. He's not only curious, but he sometimes gets in trouble. But this day, they're going to the Museum of Science, where they're going to learn lots of things. And after they've toured a lot of exhibits, they see an exhibit that has this sign. You can probably see it on your screen. How you can take care of our planet. It even has the symbol that talks about reduce, reuse, and then recycle. Sometimes when we think about things, we only think about recycling, but we need to think about the other things too. The other thing that their exhibit talked about was the need for trees and how trees help us. Curious George did not get in trouble in the museum, which was a surprise in this book. But when he was on his way out, he ran right into the museum director. I bet you can see that he did it because the hat from the man in the yellow hat that George lives with fell right down over his face. She was putting up a sign that said that they were going to have a green day. And at their green day, they were going to go to the park and plant trees. And they were also going to do some recycling of paper. And Dr. Lee was very happy to see Curious George. In fact, she said, "How is my best monkey visitor today?" I bet he's our only monkey visitor. Anyway, George was curious. He didn't know what they were going to do in the park, but he wanted to go. And she pointed out that in the back, there was a whole truckload of trees, and they're going to plant those trees. But the trees came in late, and they didn't have time for good communication, and lots of people didn't know. But George and the man in the yellow hat said they would come and help. Well, George went home, and he collected all kinds of paper, and because he knew they were going to recycle. Yeah, they had a lot in their house because they hadn't been recycling much. Then he went in his room and he said, he thought, books have paper. And he took the books off his bedroom shelf. But before he could put them in the recycle pile, the man with the yellow hat, who wasn't wearing his hat inside, came and told George that we shouldn't recycle the books because they're in really good shape. We can keep them and reread them lots of times. We use them over and over again. Or we can give them to somebody else, which means we can reuse them. And maybe we could borrow some books from the library sometimes, and then we just wouldn't have to buy as much. So they put all the paper together to go. Well, when they were walking to the park and George was pulling his wagon, the man in the yellow hat remembered that he forgot his gardening gloves, and he left George to walk to the park by himself. Well, as George walked down the block, he noticed newspapers in front of the house. Now, in some areas, newspapers are delivered right to the front door practically. And George said, oh, well, he thought, more paper to recycle. And then he went on down the block and he saw people setting up a lemonade stand, and he took the cups because they were paper. And he was at the magazine stand where they sell magazines, and he saw a pile out back, and he put those in his recycle thing. And there was a moving van with a box of paper, and he put the paper in his recycle bin. Oh, I wonder how all those people are going to feel. Their newspapers are gone, the man has lost his magazines, and the moving people who were trying to bring in the box of paper couldn't find it anymore. Well, here's what happened. George ran to the park, but behind him came all the people. Here's George, and there's the people who lost things. When George turned around, he was surprised to see so many faces, but he didn't think they were friends. They didn't look very helpful. They looked angry. But the man in the yellow hat arrived right at the last minute, explained that George was a curious monkey and he kind of gotten into some mischief. Nobody was angry anymore. They retrieved their things, but before they did, they all joined in the tree planting at the park. So it wasn't just the woman from the museum and a few volunteers. There were all the neighbors that George gathered paper from. And after they got the trees in the ground, the director said, George, you saved our day. You saved our green day. These trees will provide fresher air, and each summer we'll have more shade, which means we'll use less water to keep the grass green. Thank you, George. Being a monkey, George had known all along just how important trees are. And on the back, it shows all the steps that George went through in planting a tree. Digging a hole, putting some dirt in it, putting the tree in, watering it, putting it in some more, leveling it up, putting a stick in to help support it, watering it some more, and giving it some mulch so that the trees in the park would be happy and the people didn't have all their unread newspapers recycled. And that's the story of Curious George Plants a Tree.
We're a community that holds one another in our celebrations and in our pain. Please share your joys and sorrows either in the chat box if you're on Zoom or in the comment section if you're on YouTube. Know that wherever you are, we hold you in our hearts today. While we may be physically separated, we hold these and all our biggest feelings in our heart together. Now is the time in our service where we join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. If you would like to give this morning's offering, you can either give online at canandaiguauu.org/connect or physically by mailing a check to the church. In either case, note that you would like your gift to go towards this Sunday's offering. Our board has kindly asked that we share 100% of our monthly service with our monthly service partner this month, Safe Harbors.
Last year, I attended a Citizens Climate Lobby conference over in Troy, New York, and one of the group leaders, Sean Digg, gave a presentation and meditation to the group about just how important it is not only to be working against the injustice and negative effects of climate change, but to take some time to sit back and imagine what it is that we are all working toward. In this time of the global shutdown and slowdown, we have actually seen evidence of some of the things that we imagined that day. With less traffic through the cities and fewer people traveling between, clearing of the air, the return of the sound of birds, animals making more confident pathways through routes that they traveled before there were buildings. In this time together, please close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just find a spot to softly look at and imagine what are the things that you would see in this future world where there's less pollution and less damage caused by humans. Within the past year, I learned the distinction between self-soothing and true self-care. The former feels pretty good. It takes the edge off the raw, aching, anxious, or helpless feelings we experience by providing a temporary respite, often with distraction, avoidance, napping, substance use and abuse, and seeking into habits and behavior patterns that, at best, leave us exactly where we started, but more often leave us slipping farther from our eventual goals. During this time of quarantine, I have to admit, I've spent a lot more time in the self-soothing camp. The weight of all the problems of the world and humanity looms so large, it's been much easier and comfortable to draw inward into my safe little life at home. My dog, Matilda, has gotten a year's worth of cuddles and snuggles with absolutely no protest. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the things I'll get done tomorrow. We've enjoyed ordering in from our favorite restaurants to do our part to stimulate the local economy. I've spent a lot of time thinking about all the many things I could be doing to improve myself and the world around me, then wandering over to my comfy blanket and warm, furry friend to take a nap first. But real self-care sets the strong foundation needed for resilience and meaningful, if incremental, change. Connecting with friends and family, drawing inspiration from the amazing creativity that others have found in this temporary break from the usual expectations of society, taking a walk and admiring the bounty and beauty all around us, actually crossing things off my to-do list, making use of the extra time at home to prepare a healthy meal, coming to church. Most days, it just takes one step in the right direction to make the next step easier. So far, I haven't managed to solve any of the great problems of our time by endlessly refreshing sites with new data on the spread of the pandemic, reading more articles about how climate change remains an immediate and pressing danger, or watching my social networks' reactions to the ongoing inequality and brutality faced by people of color. But when I can take one small action toward mending the giant hole these things leave in my heart, I know that I'm also part of a much bigger movement of others taking steps, large and small, toward healing and making our shared vision of a better tomorrow one step closer to reality. As we stand on the threshold of, quite literally, re-entering the world and the usual demands of daily life, what steps can we take on a better path than the one we have been detoured from? Today, we'll be discussing some first steps you can take on the path toward greater environmental justice. Try one if you have the time and resources. I hope it will lead to others. So, Project Drawdown has largely been recognized as the most comprehensive analysis of all of the many different ways that we as a society can decrease our carbon emissions and move toward a cleaner future. It has comprehensive data on how much each step is likely to have an impact. And one of the best ways to increase your level of education on small and large choices that you and your local government, this country, and this world can move toward a cleaner tomorrow is by taking the Intro to Drawdown course online at the Pachamama Alliance website. You can use what you learn from that course as a stepping off point into the next step. I included the websites on the slides, and after I finish with the PowerPoint, I'll paste them into the chat so you can click on them there if you're interested. The next big important step that really doesn't take too much to get started with is to become known as an environmental voter. Politicians often put little stock in the opinions of environmentalists because as a bloc, they don't show up at the polls. Or even if the environment is something that's important to you and you are a regular voter, your representatives don't know that that's something important to you. So one first step is to make sure your representatives know you are an environmentalist and that you vote. You can sign a pledge at environmentalvoter.org that says, I pledge to be a consistent voter and I will always prioritize environmental issues. After signing that pledge, you can share with friends and family, social media, email, or even directly with your legislators to let them know that the environment is something that we put first. Then follow up that pledge by paying attention to the way that candidates speak about, plan about, and prioritize the environment during their campaigns so that we can get as many people into office who are going to put the greater good and environment first as possible. As we heard in our story today, the correct order of the 3 R's is reduce, then reuse, then recycle. Consider your wardrobe and the pressures of fast fashion, a huge contributor to global pollution. Can you get away with fewer wardrobe pieces, do more with less? If clothes aren't your thing, is there something else that you're in the habit of purchasing that maybe you could cut down on? Let's work together to break the addiction to Amazon and instant fulfillment of our every desire with new and shiny things by first borrowing from a friend, purchasing used, or even discovering that maybe you already have that thing that you're looking for. When we finally get to recycling, something is truly at the end of its lifespan and ready to be changed into something else, take a look at your household recycling habits. Wish cycling is a phenomenon of just throwing things into the bin and hoping that maybe, especially with the zero sort system that we have here in Ontario County, that it might be able to be recycled. But some things can really gum up the works and cause more problems than if we didn't put anything in the bin at all. Ontario County has a website specifically dedicated to the way they process recycling and what consumers can do with all kinds of tricky to get rid of items, ontariocountyrecycles.org. I encourage you to check it out and see if there's anything that you can do to make what you put in the bin everything that should be in there and nothing more. And finally, most enjoyable, getting outside and really enjoying and caring for nature. Our church has sponsored a stretch of 5 and 20 that goes roughly between the 5 and 20 bypass where the town of Canandaigua buildings are and Hickox Road as space that we have pledged to keep clean. It'll be a little bit trickier with the recommendations for social distancing, but on June 13th at 10 a.m., please meet with us in the parking lot at church for a roadside cleanup. What we'll do is we'll make kits that are already separated with the helmets and vests, gloves, and bags, so that one at a time, when you arrive, you can come pick up your kit from the porch and take your assignment of what direction you're going to focus on as we travel along the roadway. Usually within about 2 hours, a team can cover about half of the territory depending on how messy it is. So what we'll do is we'll come up with a list of assignments, of directions to take off in, and any that don't get done that day, we'll try to get on at a future date. When you arrive back, we'll have a place where you can put your gloves, helmets, and vests so they can be washed and disinfected, getting ready for the next use. Something that's easier to do today or any other day is to just go outside in your own yard. Think about planting or tending to a garden that you already have established. Get your hands in the soil and go to fruitionseeds.com for free classes and inspiration from our dear friend Petra Pageman. So all of these things that we've shared are, kind of coming at environmental justice and change from a variety of angles. If you have any ideas that you'd like to share of things that you've done or plan to do in the future, please share with us in the chat, either as an inspiration to others or making it more likely that it's something that you will get done yourself. I will put the links from the slideshow over into the box. During the time that Bill is playing.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all people living for today. Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one.
As we close and prepare ourselves to cross cross the threshold and enter back into the world, I would like to share these words from L.R. Nost as a benediction. Don't go to church. Be church. Get up off your knees. Come out of your churches, your mosques, your temples. God can hear your prayers for peace, justice, and hope in this broken world just fine while you're out creating peace, working for justice, and giving hope to this broken world. When are we finally going to realize that humanity is the solution to inhumanity? When will we finally understand that we are all drops of the same ocean, hurting together, healing together, hoping together? Don't just pray for hands to heal the hurting. Pray with hands that are healing the hurting. Don't just pray for arms to help the helpless. Pray with arms that are helping the helpless. Don't just pray for feet to respond to need. Pray on feet that are responding to need. Don't just pray for someone to do something. Be someone who does something. Don't just pray for answers. Be the answer.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, may them create peace, where justice shall roll down like the waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good times.
Now our extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.